Good afternoon, or good morning, as I recognize that some of you are joining us from other time zones to our west. Thank you for attending today's informational webinar. The development community plays a critical role in ensuring that Dominion Energy delivers on its mission to provide reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean energy that powers our customers every day. The deployment of new renewable energy resources is critical to meeting clean energy goals and in meeting energy and capacity growth needs, which is substantial. I thank you for being a valuable partner in this process. I am Todd Flowers, Director of Business Development at Dominion Energy, and our team, along with the project construction, environmental, real estate, legal, and other teams, are responsible for growing and executing a large share of our company's clean energy transformation, and we're well on our way. Just a few weeks ago, the Virginia State Corporation Commission approved more than 24 new solar projects across the Commonwealth. These projects will significantly expand Dominion Energy Virginia's growing clean energy fleet. The projects total more than 750 megawatts, enough to power nearly 200,000 Virginia homes. Construction will support more than 1,600 jobs and $570 million in economic benefits. Today's webinar is intended to provide additional information on our solar, onshore wind, and energy storage RFP so that we can continue to take steps in delivering reliable, affordable, and cleaner energy to our customers, and to meet the clean energy targets outlined in our Renewable Energy Portfolio Standard Plan. While we hope you find this webinar useful in solidifying your interest in offering clean energy solutions to Dominion Energy Virginia, this continues to be a pivotal time for Dominion Energy, and although it has been 4 years since the enactment of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, or VCEA, we still have a long way to go. Today, we are bringing together our team of leaders and experts to provide you with a summary of our 2024 solar, onshore wind, and energy storage RFP, what we are expecting in proposals, what is new this year, such as the inclusion of rooftop solar as part of our distributed energy resource, or DER proposals, and what you can expect from this overall process. A couple of logistical items. During the webinar, all audience members will remain muted throughout the entire webinar due to the number of participants. So if you have questions, I encourage you to enter them in the available space on the lower left-hand side of your screen, where it says, Ask a Question. You do not need to wait until the end of the presentation to type in your question. We will follow up and send out a copy of this presentation and all written responses to all questions in the next couple of days. Slide 3 provides today's agenda. I'll first discuss a major driver behind these annual RFPs and our progress to date. I'll then turn it over to Gary Payne, Austin Jones, and Brandon Martin to discuss what's new this year compared to prior years, key considerations in submitting successful proposals, and details on the types of assets we're looking to acquire. I do want to note that this webinar is entirely focused on the process associated with submitting proposals for project development assets. Information about PPAs will be addressed later this summer. For those that have not done business with us before, it's important to know that we are generally looking for solar, onshore wind, and energy storage assets that are ready to construct, with all environmental, cultural, real estate, and environmental justice studies and surveys completed, the interconnection queue positions filed with cost and schedule information available, and zoning or land use approval from the locality. Slide 4 provides a summary of the VCEA as it pertains to this RFP and the key drivers of our clean energy transition. Acquisition of the projects will benefit Virginia customers by supporting their future energy needs as outlined in the company's RPS plan and in its Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. The projects will also help the company achieve the requirements of the VCA and its commitment to achieve 100% zero carbon power generation by the end of 2045, with critical customer protections around reliable electric service and low-income customers. The VCA established requirements for Dominion Energy Virginia to conduct market solicitations and to annually file applications and plans encompassing the VCA requirements. The VCA includes development targets to deploy 24 gigawatts of solar, onshore wind, offshore wind, and energy storage in Virginia by the end of 2035, with interim targets for solar and energy storage as indicated here. The 2023 RPS development plan was just approved by the Virginia State Corporation Commission in the same order that approved the CE4 solar and energy storage projects. And I'm pleased to note that the company has already achieved its first interim target, 3,000 megawatts by 2024. Moving on to slide 5. As you can see from the information here, we have successfully advanced our clean energy growth plans with projects across the Commonwealth, making this RFP one of the largest annual renewable energy and energy storage solicitations in the United States. Over the past several years, we have issued 6 annual RFPs, engaged with dozens of solar, wind, and energy storage developers to consider many projects under development in the Commonwealth. And we proposed and received approval from the Virginia SCC for 33 company-owned solar and storage projects, totaling over 1.6 gigawatts of energy. The 2024 RFP will help us meet our CE6 group of projects, which we plan to file with the Commission in the fall of 2025. On slide 6, I want to highlight that we continue to encourage the submission of projects on previously developed sites. I also want to note that just as in previous years, there are specific checklist requirements for these types of project proposals. We are making good progress toward the company's VCA mandate of securing at least 200 megawatts worth of energy on previously developed sites by the end of 2035. And we believe that the inclusion of rooftop solar and solar carports will progress this effort even further. I'd like to highlight 2 projects that are good examples of our efforts to deploy solar on previously developed sites. The Ivy Landfill Solar Project was part of our CE3 filing and was the result of our RFP process. It is a facility consisting of 3 1-megawatt projects on a former landfill located in Albemarle County, Virginia. Construction is anticipated to begin later this year. The Dulles Solar Carport will be located at the Dulles International Airport. Project proposals for solar carports will now be considered. Not pictured is our Kings Creek Solar Project, which is located on a former Department of Defense fuel storage facility in York County, Virginia. That project was also part of our CE3 grouping of projects. Bringing formerly used sites back into use, or in the case of a solar carport, into dual use, provides additional benefits to the communities we serve. We encourage the consideration of solar development on these types of sites. At this time, I want to introduce our Dominion Energy team who will go through the details of this RFP and answer any questions you may have. So I'm pleased to introduce Gary Payne, who is the Manager of Business Development and leading our power generation acquisitions for Dominion Energy Virginia. Gary will discuss the RFP process and key considerations for submitting a proposal. Austin Jones, Manager of Business Development, will then review the distributed solar requirements of this RFP. Brandon Martin, Manager of Business Development, who is leading our energy storage strategy, development, and project acquisition efforts, will highlight our energy storage requirements. During the Q&A period, we will have several team members available to answer questions. This includes Amelia Boshin, Manager of Environmental Regulations, Katie McCormick, Supervisor of Environmental Regulations and an expert in environmental justice matters, Aaron Jonas, Manager of Construction Projects and our interconnection expert, Mike Gerganis, Manager of Site Construction, Robert Hare, Manager of Construction Projects and an expert in energy storage, and Blaine Garrett, Manager of our real estate team. Christine Sedler, Business Development Manager, will moderate the question and answer period. I'd like to finally say thank you for your interest in participating in this RFP and for supporting our goals and objectives toward providing reliable, affordable, and increasingly clean energy that powers our customers every day. I'll now turn it over to Gary Payne.
Thank you, Todd. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar. I'm Gary Payne, as Todd mentioned. I'm on our utility scale solar acquisition team, and I'm going to provide an overview of the RFP scope and process, along with some additional information to add to some of those things. So with respect to all acquisition proposals, they need to be located in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and each proposal is for the right to purchase all development assets for 100% of the project's proposed nameplate capacity. For the distributed energy solar projects, which we define as projects that are size 3 megawatts or less, we're looking for individual projects having a minimum capacity of 50 kilowatts. On these distributed solar projects, they also must be located in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but additionally, they must be located within Dominion Energy's service territory. Last year, we introduced the ability for projects for ownership to transfer at mechanical completion. That we can do that for projects that are 5 megawatts or smaller. That became a part of our scope last year. New this year with this RFP, we're also now accepting, and I think Todd mentioned this, rooftop and carport project proposals. Austin Jones will be presenting some additional information on that in a couple minutes. So some additional color on the utility scale proposals. We have a preference for utility scale projects located in our service territory as well. However, we'll consider projects outside of Dominion service territory as long as they're in Virginia. For storage projects, for energy storage projects, we're accepting projects that are standalone or co-located with solar or onshore wind. And I'll note that all co-located projects must have grid charging capabilities. And Brandon Martin will be providing additional information on energy proposals shortly. One of the things that we did this year is just increase transparency on expectations. All of the RFP documents, with the exception of the exclusivity agreement and purchase agreement, are available on the RFP website. So slide 8 does a nice job of laying out the steps for proposal submission. I'll just a couple notes. Dominion is required to and will continue to submit a single clean energy filing to the Virginia State Corporation Commission annually in the fall. However, we're accepting proposals throughout the year. So there's no timing requirements with respect to that. First step is to register as an RFP participant by submitting an intent to bid form and execute a confidentiality agreement. All of that stuff can be found on the web address located, at the bottom of the slide. But the signed CA should be emailed to the acquisition RFP email inbox, and that's been established. And that email address can also be found on the website. Once an intent to bid form has been submitted along with the signed confidentiality agreement. Remaining supplemental documents and the fully executed confidentiality agreement will be provided by email. And when you're ready to submit your proposal, just give us a heads up via using the same email inbox that I just referenced. Then what happens is we provide access to a SharePoint site, which becomes the portal by which we exchange, the diligence information with respect to all the development items on the checklist. And we'll also provide the purchase agreement. We anticipate our evaluation of projects to be completed within about 60 days, assuming the proposal is complete and conforms to our requirements, the RFP requirements. And if the project is selected to be for a potential acquisition, we then anticipate both parties to finalize the purchase agreement. So before turning the presentation over to Austin for a couple minutes, I wanted to highlight a few things on slide 9. And these are really meant to highlight the key pieces to stand up a quality project. And first is we're looking for a filed interconnection application, including all the reports and studies that have been completed by PJM or through the state queue process. At this time, our preference is for projects in this transition period that are PJM transition cycle 1 or earlier and currently part of decision point 1 process. We're also looking for projects to have their local permit completed, whether it be a conditional use permit, special exception permit, or a special use permit, depending on the locality. And for a whole host of reasons, the timing of this stuff, not the least of which is the PJM transition, need to make sure that those permits have sufficient time to meet, PJM's timelines. We need adequate land control, not surprisingly, for the entire project, including all easements, projects that include, and for projects that involve the construction of a new switchyard. It's also important to remember that rights may be needed to deed the switchyard property to the RTO, the regional transmission operator. We have a preference for purchase options. Additionally, our key lease terms supplemental document is available on the RFP website for guidance on what we'd like to see in lease agreements. And when we're getting down to finalizing the acquisition, this can really be a benefit because the real estate related items can take some time. This is a critical path on most closings, and obviously it's critical to maintain strong landowner relationships. And finally, we're looking for a clean, clear, combined title commitment and survey with minimal exceptions beyond those that are standard. The requirements checklist, please review it in detail. Make sure you've got the required studies and information forms are complete. And in cases where studies aren't valid or conditions may have changed, these studies will need to be refreshed. And as a reminder, all the project-related easements, such as ingress, egress, and GenTie require the same studies. Please complete the information form addendum and note that there is a requirement to include a record of community engagement for the project as well. The development plan and anticipated COD should be realistic, which includes an understanding of the interconnection process, which, as we know, is taking some time these days. We're looking for, obviously, the project's design, nameplate capacity that should be achievable and account for areas of avoidance, setbacks, buffers, stormwater controls. And finally, proposals must be accompanied with an executed exclusivity agreement and purchase agreements that are limited in the number and substance of exceptions to the form agreement, obviously would be more favorably received. And now to provide additional information on distributed solar acquisitions, I'd like to turn the time over to Austin Jones, Manager of Business Development of our distributed solar team.
Hey, thank you, Gary. Hello, everyone. Austin Jones here. I manage our distributed energy resources team, responsible for distributed scale solar acquisitions and development. I'll cover items specific to the distribution scale, affectionately known as small scale solar component of the RFP. Many of the requirements are like, if not identical to, the requirements for the utility scale solar projects. There are a few differences worth highlighting and or repeating, as well as a couple changes since last year's release that Todd and Gary mentioned. So the first difference is the capacity size limitation. We are soliciting distribution scale solar projects with a minimum of 50 kilowatts. The biggest change here in what we're soliciting as compared to last year is the inclusion of rooftop and carport solar projects located on or at commercial, municipal, or industrial commercial customer locations. Including these types of rooftop and carport projects further allows us to site these projects closer to electric load centers, and it also allows us to incorporate different types of landowners into our portfolio of distributed solar resources. Second, all distribution scale projects must be located within Dominion Energy Virginia's electric service territory, so also within Virginia, but even more confined within our service territory, because all distribution scale projects will be interconnected onto Dominion's electric distribution network. And this allows us to help our Dominion Energy Virginia electric customers realize the electric load reducing benefits that these distributed resources offer. And next, the Virginia Clean Economy Act dictates that no more than 3 megawatts of distributed scale projects be located at a single location or contiguous locations if one of the projects is 1 megawatt or smaller. Happy to provide more clarity during the Q&A session on this point if you have questions. As a reminder of an update we made this time last year, the company will accept mechanically complete proposals for projects 5 megawatts and smaller. And lastly, just let me remind this development community, the Virginia State jurisdictional interconnection process and team are managed by a separate team and distinct team from the team presenting here administering this RFP. So any interconnection specific questions can be directed to your respective interconnection project manager associated with your interconnection application or to the RFP mailbox, and those questions will be addressed accordingly. So thank you for listening, and we're looking forward to receiving and reviewing your proposals. So with that, I'll pass the mic to Brandon Martin, Manager of Business Development for Energy Storage.
Yeah, thanks so much, Austin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brandon Martin, and I lead Dominion Energy Virginia's energy storage, reliability, and resiliency team. We are focused on self-development, acquisition, and technology evaluations and energy storage for our customers here in Virginia. Once again, it's great to be able to speak with each one of you today about energy storage and the RFP process and specifically how these resources will be critical to the future reliability of the grid. On slide 11, I'm going to reiterate many things from last year, but each of the proposals that are to be submitted must be 3 megawatts in size or larger and must represent a facility at a single site. What this means is it cannot be an aggregation of multiple facilities at separate sites. Additionally, as Gary mentioned, we are seeking standalone energy storage, as well as co-located solar and storage, as well as co-located onshore wind and storage. That being said, all co-located storage projects must have a separate interconnection queue, which allows the facility to be charged and or discharged directly from the grid. Additionally, for our storage requirements, we are requiring a 4-hour duration lithium-ion AC-based storage system. We will accept alternative technologies, and we will evaluate alternative technologies when submitted, but that has to be inclusive of that 4-hour lithium battery. We are requesting that all required information as noted in the storage-related checklist is submitted to be considered a conforming bid. As in years past, there are a few items in the storage checklist that differ from other acquisition checklists and are worthy of noting in summary as follows. Specifically, the site plan to provide structure and uniformity in our energy storage site plan submission, Dominion has provided spacing and setback requirements that must be used for a project to be considered conforming. All bids incorporate the detailed spacing and setback requirements as noted in the checklist and the BESS spacing and firewall supplemental information document. But in summary, the key aspects of these requirements include 25-foot minimum spacing requirements between containers and structures or groups of containers and structures with up to 8 megawatt hours of battery. 25-foot spacing shall be provided for other site buildings and structures or equipment as well. Containers or structures with more than 8 megawatt hours of batteries shall have 50-foot spacing between those containers and structures and other buildings or structures or equipment. All containers and structures containing batteries shall be at least 100 feet from the project boundary property lines for projects that are greater than 10 megawatts in nameplate capacity size. Now, firewalls may be used to increase the energy storage density of a project in lieu of using the 25-foot spacing, but must be done in accordance with the specifications contained in the best spacing and firewall supplemental information document. That document does have graphical representations of acceptable storage layouts utilizing those spacing and firewall requirements. Now, for context on this topic, the site plan spacing, setback, and firewall requirements are included to address fire safety risks associated with energy storage projects. Now, with the evolution of industry codes and standards, the company does elect to implement best practices and design features that are required on these types of projects, included but not limited to spacing, setback, firewall requirements between the storage equipment as described in the checklist and the best spacing firewall supplemental document. These practices result in the mitigation of many of these risks. Additional design criteria may be provided in the future as needed by the company to evaluate proposals. Please specifically note that when proposing a non-lithium technology, there's an information form addendum and an RFP checklist section for alternative energy storage technologies. Now, we're requesting that bidders provide us with the various technological aspects of a BESS system that were contemplated to be utilized at a development site. What is notable includes the BESS technology, the chemistry type, megawatt size, duration, round-trip efficiencies, things like useful life or maximum cycles, the degradation profile, augmentation plan, or ramp rates. In closing, we are expecting the developer to complete all the required aspects of the checklist, including local permitting, similar to that of solar and wind storage, solar and wind projects. But Dominion will be responsible for obtaining the CPCN from the State Corporation Commission for projects that we acquire. I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the proposals that we will receive, and I will turn the presentation over to Christine Sedler, who will moderate our Q&A session.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks to all of our speakers. This concludes the formal segment of the webinar. As Brandon mentioned, I will be moderating the live Q&A session. Todd introduced the panel earlier, who will now join our speakers for this portion of the program. We've assembled a team with knowledge and experience on key topics to answer your questions. Thank you to those of you that have submitted questions so far in the chat box. Please continue to do so. If we do not have time to address every question, or if a question requires further review, we will make the responses available after this webinar. Responses will not be provided through this Global Meet webinar platform. We will answer as many questions as we can during our allotted time and then upload a comprehensive list of all of your questions on our website in a timely manner. A reminder that we will only be addressing questions that are related to the acquisition of development assets. Any questions submitted on the PPA RFP will be forwarded to the PPA mailbox at the bottom of the Q&A slide. Please use that email box if you have any questions. We appreciate your patience for our responses. And the first question is, will go to Amelia Boshin. And the question is, a search of the USFWS database indicates that my project is within range for the northern long-eared bat. What documentation should be provided with bid packages to address this? Amelia?
Hi, Christine. Thanks for that question. Sorry, my computer is freezing up on me a little bit here. It'll just be one moment.
Amelia, we're having some difficulty, little technical glitch, and are unable to hear you. So we'll move on to another question, and we'll go back to that question. So we have a question for Todd Flowers. Todd, does Dominion's re-entry into the PJM capacity auction impact your procurement in any way?
Thanks, Christine. No, our return to the capacity auction starting in the 2025 and 2026 auction does not change our plans. The procurement of our projects is driven by the Virginia Clean Economy Act, as well as the tremendous growth in our Dominion zone, as noted in our most recent IRP.
All right, thank you, Todd. And I apologize. I think the technical glitch was with me. So we're going to go back to a question for Amelia, and I apologize about that. And if you could kind of complete your response to question number 1 regarding the northern long-eared bat and what documentation should be provided with bid packages.
Thanks, Christine. So if you have a project that falls within the range for northern long-eared bat, bidders should, if there is a belief that no habitat exists on site, you may conduct a habitat assessment to document that there is no suitable habitat on site. That information could be coordinated with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. However, northern long-eared bat does occupy a fairly wide range of habitat types in Virginia. So it's pretty unlikely that you would not have habitat on any site where you have to do tree clearing or structure removal. So in the more likely scenario that you do have potential habitat for northern long-eared bat on site, or if you're not sure, you should plan to conduct a field survey to determine presence or absence during the appropriate survey window. And your survey plan and your survey results would be coordinated with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that information should be provided with your bid package. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. The next question is environmental as well. A search of the USFWS database indicates that my project is within the range for the tricolored bat. What documentation should be provided with bid packages to address this?
So the answer to that question is going to be essentially the same as the answer for northern long-eared bat. So if tricolored bat does show on, when you do your U.S. Fish and Wildlife database search, either you'll want to demonstrate that there's no habitat, meaning, conduct a formal survey of that and get concurrence from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that you have no habitat, or if you do have habitat or you're unsure if you have habitat, you'll want to go ahead and do a field survey, fully coordinate that with the agency, and provide all of that documentation with your bid package.
Thank you, Amelia. And then the next question is, if a project falls within the range for northern long-eared bat or tricolored bat, will 2 separate survey efforts and individual coordination with USFWS be required? Amelia?
No, great question. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has published field survey guidance that's appropriate for both northern long-eared bat and tricolored bat, so that both species can be evaluated in a single survey effort. Just make sure that you're coordinating your survey plan as well as your survey results with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and again, providing all of that documentation when you submit your bid package.
Thank you. And finally, one other environmental question to start out with. Will Dominion accept a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers delineation concurrence letter with a complete bid package in lieu of a jurisdictional determination?
So the company would strongly prefer to receive a jurisdictional determination confirmation confirmed by the Corps of Engineers and confirming the location of regulated features on project sites. The delineation concurrence letter does not provide the same level of certainty and may result in additional regulated features being identified on site during the permitting process. However, the company is aware that particularly the Corps of Engineers Norfolk District is not currently prioritizing standalone jurisdictional determination requests. So if you have requested a jurisdictional determination confirmation from the Corps and you've been informed that a jurisdictional determination is not going to be issued in time to support submittal of your bid package, we would accept a delineation concurrence letter in lieu of a JD when you submit your bid package in that instance. And we would also want to see that correspondence with the Corps demonstrating that you sought a jurisdictional determination and they offered up only the delineation concurrence letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Our next question goes to Todd Flowers. What is the size range for these projects, and at what point in the development cycle is Dominion looking to purchase these projects?
Great, thanks, Christine. The target for distributed energy projects or DER projects is 50 kilowatts to 3 megawatts, and that's an alternating current. We set that 3 megawatt range because that's defined by the VCA. There is that 1.1 gigawatt carve out for DER projects, so we define them as 50 kilowatts to 3 megawatts. We are also accepting projects at both notice to proceed or fully developed and mechanically complete projects, and those projects will be accepted for capacities that are 5 megawatts and less. For utility scale projects, our preference is that the project has reached the development phase, where essentially it's ready to be provided as part of our EPC RFP process. For energy storage projects, there is a minimum size of projects that are 3 megawatts.
Thank you, Todd. Our next question is for Gary Payne. What is required when a project is accepted by right and already conforms to the permitted use of zoning? When special use permit is not required, what document should be submitted?
Yeah, sure. Good question. We would expect a note on just to that effect, that it's a by right. And we would also like information on how the project's been socialized with the locality, how it's been received. And then finally, with all of our projects, we require a zoning confirmation letter from the locality confirming the zoning status. That would be a closing question. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Our next question is for Austin Jones. Does the new rooftop and carport projects need to provide 10-acre land option for switch yards?
So if I'm understanding this question correctly, no, these projects will connect directly into Dominion Energy's distribution grid. The interconnection process for these projects are the same as any other project interconnected to our distribution system. and dedicated switch yards are not required for projects of this size.
Thank you, Austin. Next question is for you as well. What are projects over 3 megawatts and still on the distribution grid? What are they considered?
Yeah, so Dominion Energy's distribution grid is able to accommodate projects approximately 20 to 24 megawatts. And so those projects are, hold on one second, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But these projects are colloquially called DER projects that are 3 megawatts and smaller. And technically, any project connected to our distribution system is a distribution scale project. And so these are all distribution scale projects if they're connected to our distribution system, but our DER projects, those are to align with the statute, the Virginia Clean Economy Act. We refer to those as DER projects, and those are projects that are 3 megawatts and smaller.
Thank you, Austin. One more question for you. It's clear that you don't permit co-location of 3 megawatt projects if one of the projects is 1 megawatt or smaller. Will you accept co-located projects if none of the individual projects are 1 megawatt or smaller? I.e., would you accept 2 or 3 co-located projects that were all 3 megawatts?
Yes, the statute does not explicitly have such a co-location restriction for projects larger than 1 megawatt. And so, if the locality issuing the permit will allow this, then we'll consider it conforming.
Thank you, Austin. Our next question goes to Brandon Martin. What are the interim goals for storage between 2024 and 2035?
Yeah, thanks, Christine. The company must petition the State Corporation Commission for 250 megawatts of energy storage by 2025, by the end of 2025, 1,200 megawatts by the end of 2030, and 2,700 megawatts by the end of 2035. Now, you need to keep in mind that this also includes the 35% power purchase agreement in that complete total.
Thank you, Brandon. I do have another question for you. Is there a maximum size best target for this RFP?
I would say ultimately we look at the sizing of energy storage to be in compliance with the goals established in the VCEA, as well as meeting our RPS and IRP plans, ultimately for the benefit of the customer. So there certainly could be some discussion and evaluation about the right size of projects from year to year.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next question is for Todd. Will these slides in the presentation with Q&As be made available after the meeting?
Yes, both the Q&A file and the presentation will be made available in the next couple of days.
Thank you. And I have another question for you. Will there be a detailed document RFP released for a specific project? If not, how can we set up a meeting to discuss our capabilities with you in terms of solar and BESS development and approach potential projects together?
So the RFP document itself can be found on the website, and any questions associated specifically with the RFP can be found on the RFP email address. We don't have a specific RFP by project. If you're looking to provide like goods and services to Dominion, I encourage you to reach out to a team member, in our business development team to discuss that. But we won't send out a separate RFP by project. It's really just a general RFP soliciting the acquisition of projects.
Thank you, Todd. The next question is for Brandon. Regarding best bids, is Dominion seeking to acquire equipment from the seller in addition to the project permits, site plans, interconnection, position, etc.?
Thanks, Christine. This is definitely an area of sensitivity. We prefer to work directly with the EPC as well as the manufacturer of BESS equipment to ensure that all of our company-specific and technical requirements are in conformance with the company's requirements, say safety, cybersecurity, etc.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next question is for Todd. In the 100% acquisition of a project, is the intent of the company to purchase the land, or are leases for the term of the project acceptable?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a preference for a purchase option. However, a lease option is great as well. We do encourage you to review the real estate supplements and all the documentation, as it does provide some required provisions to be included in any type of lease agreement.
Thank you, Todd. Our next question goes to Brandon. Will Dominion consider storage projects that have queue positions in the transition cycle 2 and or later?
Yeah, thank you, Christine. The company does prefer queue positions that are in transition cycle 1 or earlier. That doesn't mean we won't consider transition cycle 2 projects, but they are much earlier stage in the development, and we certainly have an eye on doing our best to limit the potential customer risk on changes that happen with PJM studies over time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandon. Our next question is for Austin Jones. On DER solar acquisitions, can you please clarify what is meant by same or contiguous location, separate and or subdivided properties?
Sure, yeah. Same means projects that are on the same parcel, or contiguous locations means parcels that are directly adjacent to each other. The separation and or subdivision of those parcel boundaries is only relevant to the extent one of the projects is 1 megawatt smaller.
Thank you, Austin. Our next question is for Aaron Jonas. Aaron, at what stage of the interconnection would Dominion consider a bid for a project?
Christine, I can take this. Gary, I can take this if Aaron's not available or having issues. But basically, it's similar to Brandon's answer. And I think we have a couple of these questions with regard to PJM and the queue and interconnection status. Look, we'll review a project at any stage of interconnection. Any stage of interconnection will be considered. However, the further a project is in the process, the more favorable, right? The more we can understand the costs and a whole host of other issues related with the interconnection. That's a pretty key piece. So the more we can understand about it, the more favorably we can look at the proposal. That's generally the idea. We're not going to, prohibit anyone. We understand the situation with PJM, but that's the deal. Preference for those that are further along.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for jumping in for Aaron. So Austin, the next question is for you. If a rooftop or carport project is submitted, is there a length of time that the location would need to be available for the installation?
Well, the lease agreement needs to accommodate at least enough time to construct and install the system. This may be as short as a few months or as long as a couple of years.
All right. Thank you, Austin. All right. So just to let's see, Blaine, I have a question for you. During the RFP process, will we know if the landowner site control agreements check all the DE boxes, or will the agreements be amended after RFP award?
Thank you, Christine. We prefer to not to amend the agreements for site control. If all the T's and C's are in place. However, if there's not enough term, or if some of the T's and C's that we are required to have are not included, then they would need to be amended. That would need to be reviewed. We would need to review all of those along with title. So I think the general terms that we are looking for site control are located in the BD website.
Thank you, Blaine. And then I have a question for Todd. What is the quickest time frame for construction start for a project selected in this RFP cycle, assuming all diligence meets Dominion's expectations and interconnection does not impact the schedule?
Yeah, thanks, Christine. This 2024 RFP will help us meet our CE6 group of projects, which we plan to file with the Commission in the fall of 2025. So once we receive a project, we select that project. We have to go through an EPC RFP process. That'll line up the project for a CE6 grouping. We would file with the SCC in the fall of 2025, and then would anticipate an order from the SCC in the second quarter of 2026. We couldn't officially initiate construction activities until that CPCN is approved. So it would be the spring of 2026.
Thank you, Todd. And now I have a question for Austin. If a solar project is 5 megawatts and connected to the Dominion distribution system, would it still be considered a utility scale project?
Yes. So with our RFP definitions, though it's connected to our distribution system, this will be reviewed as a utility scale project. And this distinction is important because it will also be reviewed as a utility scale project by our State Corporation Commission, because their review is historically aligned with the Virginia Clean Economy Act definitions.
Thank you, Austin. Our next question is for Amelia Boshin. What environmental documents will need to be submitted for rooftop DER projects?
As a general rule, all the same environmental documents and study requirements will apply to rooftop projects.
All right. Thank you, Amelia. This question is for Gary. Is there a maximum number of megawatts Dominion will procure this year? Or is the strategy to take as many projects with approved local permits, given how much harder local permitting is getting in Virginia?
Yeah, certainly local permitting is a key gating item for projects. We have a host of projects in our pipeline now that our own development team has worked through. And basically the process is we necessarily score all of the projects. So if a project comes in and it's frankly better than something we have in our pipeline, then we'll bring it in and take it and construct it. We don't have an open kind of like stated target or limitation with what we're looking at with respect to kind of volume, what we're taking in, but yeah, I hope that helps. We'll look at everything. We'll look at everything and it comes in and it gets scored and then it goes from there. When I say scored, it's scored on our scoring, comparing it to other projects. and the best ones win.
Thank you, Gary. Then we have a question for Austin. For co-location of projects, is Dominion able to operate on sites that have an existing solar facility operated by a third party?
Yes. So, I mean, if this project is granted a use permit, then and, you know, the other specifics in the project kind of allow for this additional solar use, then technically, yes.
Thank you, Austin. Then we have a question for Brandon Martin. On the best side, what are your requirements and or preferences for data analysis and software control mechanisms?
Yeah, Christine, thanks. This is a very technical and very detailed document. We would need to work with the individuals to execute a non-disclosure agreement to work through this and discuss these specifics and requirements. But ultimately, we really do prohibit the remote control and access of data in and out of our system. So we'll get you in touch with the right folks if there are people that want to work through that.
Thank you, Brandon. And I think we just got another question in. So let's see, I think this question would go to Gary. If you just... You mentioned that the RFP process takes around 60 days. Does this include Dominion's due diligence and the purchase agreement is signed at the end of the 60 days? Can you walk us through the timeline from the date a bid is submitted?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it depends, frankly. Right? If it's done, then yeah, we could do it in 60 days. Right? Diligence to signed APA. And typically, and just frankly, it takes a bit longer. You know, working with landowners on lease amendments, getting the right documentation on this and that, and I mean, there's a host of pieces in the closing conditions in the APA that have to get met. But certainly 60 days for a project that's fully developed is doable. It's not typical, certainly doable. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Gary. Another follow-up question for you. I think we talked about it a little bit before, but if there's any other color or context, is there a specific project stage, i.e. notice to proceed, that the project needs to be at in order to close if selected for this RFP?
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty robust list of development items that need to be completed for a project to close. We'll review projects at any stage of development, right? They just might come in as non-conforming, and you can review and talk about them. But if everything's done on the checklist, then we'll close. And the APA is negotiated in all the commercial terms and the like. I'm not seeing the question on the sheet, so I can't read it. But can you read the question back again, Christine? Because I don't know if I answered it well.
Yeah, sure. No problem. It was, is there a specific project stage that the project needs to be at in order to close if selected for this RFP?
Yeah. I think Todd mentioned it earlier. You know, we call it pre-NTP. I call it EPC ready. So it's basically everything done such that we can take it into our EPC RFP process to get a fully informed, firm fixed price proposal from an EPC. And that's where we need it to be. And that's where we would close when all that's done.
Thank you, Gary. I do believe that that's the last question in our queue. So thank you to Gary and to the rest of our panel. And thank you, bidders, developers, and other webinar participants for your time today. This concludes our presentation. We appreciate your engagement today. Have a great rest of your day.